It was warm for September in New York, but it was a beautiful, clear day, and crystal blue skies, and we're going across the Brooklyn Bridge. This is two minutes after the first plane hit the Trade Center, and you really couldn't see the damage until you hit the middle of the bridge, the crest of the bridge, and as you came over the crest of the bridge, you could see the damage, and you could see that there were 6 or 8 or 10 floors of fire, an incredible amount of black smoke. The pictures that you see. And I said to myself, this was no accident, and this was no small plane. And like any firefighter will do, the guys here, same thing, I started to size up the situation. I had to start formulating my tactics and strategy. All right, I had to look at the direction of the wind. I had to see where the fire was in the building. You have to gather as much information prior to getting to the scene, and that's what I started doing. And when I look back on it later on, I said, I must have been crazy to think that we could ever even approach this fire. There was just so much fire. Each floor in the Trade Center was 200 feet by 200 feet. And the winds alone up on the 60th, 70th, 80th floor, if they blow in, you have a fire 200 feet by 200 feet, fueled by jet fuel, we would have all been incinerated. But I'm looking at it as a normal fire, and I'm sizing it up, and it's like, all right, we got to formulate our strategy. And we got to cross the bridge. I was overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. And if you think about it, the first plane hit the first building. Everybody in Lower Manhattan evacuated their buildings, and they were watching this spectacle, this terrible spectacle, but in what they felt was relative safety of the streets. And we pulled up, and there were thousands upon thousands of people in the street. All the people in Lower Manhattan just watching this. And with that, we parked on the east side of the Trade Center on Church Street, directly across from the South Tower. We pulled up, we parked. I realized, like today, I just have a white shirt on. I didn't have any of my firefighting gear, and I realized immediately if I was going to fight this fire, if I was going to work at this fire, I had to get firefighting gear. And I remembered that there's a firehouse right on the south corner of the Trade Center, 10 House that Angie was talking about earlier, is just across the street from the South Tower on Liberty Street. So I said, I'll go there and I'll get gear. I had to get gear. You have to have gear. If you're going to be a fireman, if you're going to fight the fire, you have to have gear. And so I started walking south. I walked the half block south, and as I was making the turn onto Liberty Street to go to the firehouse, the second plane hit, and it blew up over my head, and thousands of people in the street. And I heard the plane coming in. I never saw it. It came in quick. I was on the east side of the building. It came in from the south. I was so close to the building, I never saw it coming in. But to this day, when I have planes flying overhead low, or I don't see them, it's very upsetting to me. That sound has stayed in my mind. And there was that tremendous explosion, and I looked up, and the entire sky above me was a fireball. And the other officer I was with asked me afterwards, he goes, do you remember feeling the heat? And I was like, I really didn't. He goes, because I could feel the heat from the fireball. But with the explosion, everybody, thousands of people in the street ran for their lives, because now, in addition to the fireball, parts of the building, parts of the plane, everything started coming down around us. And we were literally in the death zone, and everybody ran. And, brave fireman, I ran like a little girl. And it was, you had to get out of the zone where everything, one of the pictures really shows all the debris coming down. And I remember seeing in the street, aircraft landing gear, whether it was from the first plane or the second. A man was running next to me, and I remember him falling, and I went to help him up, and the back of his head was open. And it was just, you had to get out of that. You had to get out of that zone, and it was just overwhelming. It just overwhelmed your senses. And I got about a block, and I said, all right, you got to get back in the ball game. You consciously got to get your wits about you. You got to get back in the ball game. I'm at the command post. I'm listening to the radio, and the first thing I hear is it's an incredible transmission. It was that the elevators were free-falling. I got a mayday for elevators free-falling. And in 23 years, I've never heard this. This is just something that doesn't happen. And with that, I started to look up to tell the chief of department that I had a mayday for elevators free-falling. And this is with firemen in them and civilians in them. And I start to say chief, and with that, the South Tower started to come down. And all of us at the command post, everybody at the command post just started, right behind us were the underground parking garages, and everybody, the sound was tremendous, and everybody just ran for the underground parking garages, and I never got to look up. I never got to see the South Tower coming down, but I had a good idea if everybody else was running that I better run too. And so I started for the underground parking garage. I fell. I got up. I thought I was okay for a second. Then I said, I got to get in these parking garages. And with that, I guess the percussion from the building coming down, it took me off my feet like a big wave. And it just blew me down the parking garage ramp. And the dust came rushing over, and the debris started to pile up in front of the entrance. And there was zero visibility. The noise was getting louder. I was laying there flat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get up. I was sure that any second that the roof of the parking garage was going to come down on top of me. And all I could think of, it was the one moment I was really overwhelmed with a tremendous sadness. And I thought I was never going to see my kids again. And that was all I could think of, was that I'd never get to see them walk down the aisle. And it was all, they always say, the moment of your death, your life flashes before your eyes. But all I could think of was I was never going to see my two little girls. And I laid there, and the dust collected over us, and